Hey everyone, welcome to LaurenLive, the spirituality, health, and lifestyle podcast. I have Michelle Henderson with me. How are you doing today?
I am doing fantastic. Thank you so much for having me today.
Definitely. Thanks for being on the show. So Michelle is an intuitive, medium, psychic. She's an educator, spiritual artist. The list goes on. She's got a lot of amazing gifts that she's sharing with the world. And we're going to focus on intuitive children and how she's kind of wrapped spirituality and education together. So I'm really excited. I have a daughter. If there's anyone listening that has kids or is around kids, or if you're an educator, this episode might be extra special for you. Let's dive in. Tell us a little bit about yourself and then how you kind of came to where you are now.
And I will do it very short, or we will be here more than 1 hour.
Okay.
I started out, of course, professionally as an educator. I did several different careers in education, and then I really had the psychic and mediumship abilities when I was a child. I didn't really know what was going on, and I was really confused, and I was afraid of it. And of course, I grew up in Abilene, Texas, where it's the Bible Belt of Texas. And so everything was shut it down, shut it down, shut it down. So then in my 20s, I had a spiritual awakening. And what a spiritual awakening is, spirit is like knocking at your door saying, are you ready yet to work with us? And you become aware and you know that there's something bigger than yourself, and things were happening. And again, it just was not the right time, but I still used my psychic abilities working with children and, just an everyday occurrence. And then when COVID hit, it's very interesting, like I'd say about 6 months before COVID, where we were shut down, I just felt this calling. And I told my husband, I said, I really need to come out as a psychic medium. That's where I feel like the next part of my life is leading me. And, he supported me 100%. He said, you need to do this. So I think he felt it as well, that it was time for me to come out of the closet, as we say, as a psychic medium. And then I joined classes of how to really tune into my skills, because it's like anything else. You need to learn how to work with it. Mm-hmm. And I met so many psychic mediums that went through the same life story. When they were children, it was shut down. And they didn't know what to do with it. They were confused until, 50 plus. And they're going, okay, now it's time for me to come out just like me. And so I really felt the need that this book, it was time. And so I wrote a book to help, kind of move things along so that people are not afraid to nurture these children. And know what to do to help them, instead of shutting the door on them.
Yeah. And will you share the title of the book?
Yes, absolutely. So it's Spiritual Nurturing for Intuitive Children.
Perfect.
Yes. And I put in the spirituality as well, because I think it's really important for them to also grasp that there is a divine, that there is something spiritual in the world, and all of this is spiritual. It's not anything to be afraid of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think, I talk a lot about this on the show. We are kind of conditioned to think a certain way, whether it is
absolutely
religious aspects, our politics, just how school, education, how you're supposed to live your life. And I really think that's so important. If there are children that have, many do, most of us actually, all of us, I believe, have intuition and have these abilities. Mm-hmm. It's just some may be a little stronger, and then also, right, was it pushed down?
Right.
And so then you never knew how to tap into that, right, or foster it. So I think it's so important to tune in to the child when they're younger and allow them to, tell, because there's a lot of kids that will say things about past lives and things that, I see, something over there, a spirit or an angel, or I see, one of our past relatives over across the room. I mean, you can't make that stuff up. Like, that is something so incredible, right? So I think being able to support the child, think of how cool their life could, right? Like, they wouldn't have to wait till they're 50, right? Or
absolutely,
in my 30s, like starting to look at the world differently. I wish I knew what I knew now then, but that's okay. This is part of my path, right?
That's exactly what I was going to say. A lot of times there is a reason for everything. Mm-hmm. And I think with, especially with my generation, maybe it wasn't time yet for everybody to come out until recently, because we're having a big energy shift right now. And I think, like you said, a lot of children are really experiencing a lot of spiritual experiences. Especially right now. And I think they always have, but I think people are beginning to be more aware of it and open to it.
Yeah.
And, but yeah, so, and of course, they did have the term Indigo children in the 60s. Mm-hmm. So, we know generation to generation, we know that everybody is born with intuitiveness.
Right.
And, and it's just if you're going to use it or not. Mm-hmm. And some people, they really don't use it in their life, and that's okay. That's the pathway that they are on.
Exactly. Yep. Or I think now a lot of people are calling star children, or there's different names, but it's all the same thing. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. I think the awareness now, like you said, it has existed. There's always been people, mediums and spiritual aspects to each generation, right? But there is a different awareness and energy right now. It's really cool.
Yes.
It's a cool time to be here and witness this. So knowing that, what do? How do we help our children? How do we as parents or educators or any, whatever your role may be, how do we recognize that maybe our child has intuitive gifts, or how do we speak to them?
And that's a wonderful question. And I think for us, and I'll go back to the other questions, but for us, I think just talking about it like what we're doing right now is so important. The conversation needs to be out there so that it educates other people. And they're going, oh, I understand it completely. Because if you don't understand it and you don't have the knowledge, of course, you're going to be afraid of it, and you're going to tend to shut it down. But if a child, there are several different characteristics that shows if a child is showing intuitive abilities. And like, if they're starting to talk to an imaginary friend, and they play with an imaginary friend, or if they're talking to deceased relatives, or sometimes, like you said, they'll have a past life that they go, oh, I remember what I used to do when or they speak a whole different language that they have not been taught. That's not unusual. But and sometimes they can feel the energy, and they may not be able to see the person. So sometimes at night, they will be afraid because they feel all the energies in the room, because spirit, a lot of times, and our loved ones who have passed on, they want to communicate at night because everything is quiet, everything is calm. And of course, that's when we try to sleep, and a child, is not any different, will feel this. And so they may become afraid of it. So the best thing that a parent can do is to listen to their child and ask them questions. Well, what do you think is going on? How can I help you? And don't be afraid of it, but listen to your child is the number one step. Okay. Because a lot of parents will just say, oh, I don't want to talk about it.
Right. Or they're just being like kids. It's, they're making stuff up.
Absolutely. That's just your imagination.
Right.
That kind of thing. But yeah, so, and then the child will go, oh, now I feel really silly. And then they'll start becoming more self-conscious of it and begin to shut down. And I'm saying usually about when they're 4 or 5, they become more aware. When they're 3, they're just going, oh, okay. And they'll just continue doing what they're doing. But what really happens too, whenever they become socially aware that it's not, I think it's like what we're talking about. It's different now, but people would kind of look at you kind of strange and go, what are you talking about? And especially when they become teenagers, they want to be accepted. Right. And that will shut it down very quickly. If they have a friend that looks at them in disgust or, says, I can't believe that's all evil, or, right. and that's a part of them. That's a puzzle piece. And that's how I felt. I felt like I was having to shut down a part of myself.
Yeah. Yeah. I felt that too. It's so hard because, and that's what I always, try to talk about on the show. Like, no matter what you believe, that's great. I'm never here to sway people. This is just, my experience, my guest experience. And like you said, everyone's on their own path, and that's your perfect path. There's no judgment, but even I experience it right now, right? As an adult, saying things like, oh, like I see chakra colors, and, there's been different things coming through, and my friends are like, are you sure that's not like the devil? And I'm like, no, like it's like warm, loving feeling. And then I found out that one of my really good Christian friends, when she prays, also sees colors. And I thought like, it's all the same energy. Like that's like a perfect example of like, she may be praying, I might be meditating. We have completely different religious beliefs, right? But we're still saying that same energy, which I believe is love and positivity, and purple is your intuition, And
you know what? And y'all are perfect for one another too. Because like you said, you have different beliefs and everything, same experience. And both of you are able to talk about it. So do you openly talk about it and have conversations?
Yeah, I talk to a group of my girlfriends they're all Christian, the three of them. And we went to SPU, which is a Seattle Pacific. It's a Christian college. And I've read the Bible, like I'm very familiar. I had my, little time in my life where I thought that was right for me. And I just decided it wasn't. Right. But, I tell them all the crazy metaphysical stuff. And sometimes they're like, oh boy. And then sometimes, like they'll be like, oh, like numerology, or this happened to me, Lauren, you would love this. And I'm like, see you guys, like I don't push it, but I always just share.
Right.
So,
and I've got to tell you this story too. It reminds me because I'm the same way. And it's very interesting. Even though I grew up in a Christian home, I was so drawn to metaphysics. I was so drawn to it. But whenever I first came out, the closet right before COVID, I was on Facebook Live and I was so excited. I got my business page done. I'm coming out as a psychic medium, and I start the feed, and all of a sudden I'm talking and I start seeing names on there. And I'm going, that's not on my business page. So I was on my personal page and I panicked for a few minutes, and I'm thinking, you know what? This has happened for a reason. Yeah. My community needs to know about it. After that, it went on the air. I had 3 members on my church come to me and they go, oh, it's so cool. Can I have a reading?
Oh, cool.
So you just never know,
Totally. And it can, again, I think it can be combined. Like a family friend that married us, worked as a pastor at a church, believes in Jesus, but she also believes a little non-traditionally that, a lot of the stuff that we're talking about in intuition, and she has psychic abilities. And so I think it can be intertwined. I think a lot of people are very scared to tap into that because I think it's very anti what they believe. But the thing is, it can be intertwined, right? And as long as I always say, as long as it's in good intent for the best good, love and light, like we're good, right? We're not tapping into an evil area. No. So I want people to know it's not some crazy weird, like cultish thing. This is about the same things that Christianity, love, compassion, forgiveness. It's all about that, right? And helping one another and tapping into our intuition center. So that's why I think this is such an important episode, talking about our children.
Oh, absolutely.
Like we really have to foster this because we are coming to such an interesting time. And I think we're going to need these gifts more than ever to really find truths, because there's just so much chaos in the world.
Yes.
And that's something I like to ask people, kind of, what is your interpretation of what's going on? There is a huge energy shift. And do you think that these children are coming in with more psychic abilities because, maybe they're either evolved souls or they're here to help kind of bring us into this new wave of energy? Like, what are your thoughts?
My thoughts exactly. And I think we are also, I think the children are stronger, and it's almost like this generation, they're more geared to more acceptance, and they don't really care about what other people think about them. And I think we are beginning to open up ourselves and have that spiritual awakening. So even though they're stronger, they have to be, heard as well and accepted and understood. So I think it takes both of us to really make it work.
Definitely.
Because like in the 60s, they came, I don't know if they were heard or not, but they did plant the seed along the way for this generation. Totally. And I think it's very interesting that you brought up that that, there are different religions, there's different beliefs. And I know a lot of people that are working with these families of children, who have the psychic abilities. You've got to really come in from where they are coming from.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't want to make them angry, say, okay, I want you to do this with your child to help strengthen their ability. But if they don't believe in it or they don't want to try that exercise, don't push it. Yeah. Just try to educate them and try to tell them how spiritual it is.
Definitely. Yeah. And you never want to force things.
No.
Totally.
No.
Yeah. And I think that's what I try to even do. Like I was saying with my friends, like I'll mention it, but then if there's no further questions, I just got to kind of leave it there. And
you're planting the seed, though, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Totally.
Yes.
That's so cool. Wow. Okay.
And I know a lot of people ask, well, my child has special needs, and I think that they're spiritual. I think they're seeing things. Could that possibly be it? And the answer is yes, because special needs children actually, we all have our angels, all our team. And I think they feel more so because they have such a bigger team that help them along the way. And they don't have the judgment, they have the love. And if they see something, they're not afraid of it. Mm-hmm. And I know that I worked with a lot of children with autism, and a lot of times they would glare off in the distance and start laughing. And I'm going, what are you laughing at?
Yeah.
and so it makes you wonder, what are they looking at?
Yeah. Yes. My baby's done that before too. When she was really young, she'd stare up in the corner and she'd start smiling. And I'm like, what is going on? And I think, I do think maybe, babies and young, they can definitely see things that we can't, because that veil is so fresh, right? It's so thin from that other side, wherever they came from.
Yes.
Yeah. I've actually heard that before too. I want to be obviously sensitive to the topic, because I know people that have children with disabilities or things like that, it's sensitive. But I have heard that before too, that children that come in with like autism or other learning disabilities and things like that, even or physical ailments, often are even more spiritual. I think that's really interesting. And maybe that was something they chose to come through to, one, for themselves, but also to help the people in their lives learn some things.
Absolutely. And and I always tell everybody, we need these children because they do think so differently. Yeah. And they have such senses are so different because it's over. Sometimes they'll have too much of the senses happening and everything. And so I think that's a lot of times when they can't communicate that, but they see so much. And what I like to call them are kaleidoscope children, because they can see the different realms in a room. They can see the different earth energies. And they are so good a lot of times with logical things, math, reasoning. They understand computers when they're not taught.
Right.
It just comes to them. And they can actually, nonverbal children who have been diagnosed with autism can communicate with you telepathically.
Wow.
And it's fascinating. As I was doing research for the book, I thought, that makes complete sense, because I worked with several children that I feel like we were communicating that way.
That's so interesting.
Because I would always use that intuitiveness. William Stillman is a psychic medium who has been diagnosed with Asperger's, higher functioning autism. And he's written so many books about how important it is to have these children and that they are here to help us along the way, the journey and the spiritual awakening.
Wow. And that's so interesting, right? Because we think as a society, like, sure, they might be smart. Asperger's, especially like in certain areas, they can like look at something and memorize it. Whereas, like I could never, that would take me years potentially, to memorize something or just retain information or tap into things that they are. But then maybe like day-to-day tasks or socially, they wouldn't really know what to do, right? Whereas most of us know how to do that. So I think it's interesting but then a lot of us tend to not have that ability to tap into the intuition like they do. So it's like almost like there's this opposite where their strengths, each of us play. We can learn so much from each other.
Absolutely.
That is actually fascinating.
And that's how you just accept them where they are. Temple Graydon, if I pronounce her last name correctly, she has her PhD, very high functioning autism. There's been a show about her life on HBO. And she talks about connecting with cows. I know it sounds very intriguing, but with cows, with animals, she can feel what they're feeling.
Oh, wow.
And so she actually invented like a cattle, a way for the, before they get slaughtered. I hate to say it that way, but before they do, to make it less painful, she said, we need to make them calm. So she was able to invent a chute to help them feel calm along the way.
Interesting.
And so you just never know what they're going to tap into.
That's fascinating.
Fascinating.
Wow. Yeah. And it's like I had a small experience like in high school where I had she was pretty like serious with her learning disability. I'm not exactly sure what it was. I think it was autism. And in high school, but any little change, right? They're so sensitive, would like really freak her out. But again, imagine what also they can be tapping into that we have no idea because we're just in this like tunnel vision. So that's fascinating with the animals or environment, feeling things that a lot of us wouldn't even ever feel.
Yes, absolutely. That's why they need the support.
Yeah,
absolutely. And it is not easy. And I get, and like you said, it's a very sensitive topic. Yeah. And I always think of it this way, talking about Jesus, okay? Mary had to be a strong woman to be able to, raise Jesus and be around him and everything that she had to go through. It's basically the same thing with a parent with special needs or a child with autism. They have to be strong. They have to be a warrior to bring up these children.
That's true.
So, absolutely. Yes. And you have to look at the positivity of it as well.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's interesting you brought up because people that have, maybe you feel this way too, since you have psychic abilities, but I haven't had like psychic stuff come through. I've had like some intuition definitely for sure, but I do consider myself like an empath. So very sensitive and I feel things very deeply and it can be like hard, right, to sometimes deal with stuff in life because it's just, I have so much empathy for what's going on. And I think there's varying degrees of that, right? But I had a medium that I work with for a really long time and she can just get anything. Like she'll be like, like I can see your energy right now above your head. And so when she goes into an airport, for instance, because there's so much energy, she has to do exercises before where she almost kind of just shuts things off and protects herself because it's just so overwhelming, right? You can't turn that off. And so in a way, a lot of people that are very intuitive or psychic, they have stuff like that too. It's not always just great. Like, I can predict things. It's actually functioning in this world. It can be very difficult. It's very overwhelming and you can't turn that off.
And it is more difficult when you're younger. I feel like as I got older, it got easier to shut it off.
Okay.
And control it and make boundaries.
Right.
For spirit. But yeah, if you're, it depends on the sensitivity. I was never, it can very much happen in an airport or a busy place. And that brings on the anxiety. You feel everything and it's really hard to shut down. So I understand where your friend is coming from.
Yeah.
But yeah, so everybody has different ways that they do have to deal with it, but absolutely.
Yeah. So anyways, I just think that's interesting that whether it's something like autism or just really spiritual, like people don't always think about that though.
That's true.
The different,
Yeah, and last night I actually went to a movie theater to watch a movie, and I had a grandmother pop in with a young man that I was sitting next to, and she was just telling me all about him, and I'm going, okay, that's great. Now can I watch the movie?
Yeah.
So you just never know when they want to have a conversation, or but you do have to set those boundaries and say, I'm only working when I'm working.
Yeah, take care of your energy. And that's true. Yes. Definitely. Wow. Very cool. Okay. So what else do you talk about in the book? Like what are some other things that you've noticed coming on or what else can we do? I just think, it's
Right.
like, yeah, I mean, what else do you think?
Okay. So what I do in the book is pure guidance. I mean, I do talk about the different characteristics that a child can have. But the book also kind of walks you through if somebody who is not real familiar with crystals or yoga or breathing exercises, what I did is I took all the information that an adult can, have access to and make it child like a child would need it. Looking at it from a child Oz point of view, because you're not going to have a child do yoga like an adult would. But I talk about different exercises that you can do. And the number one thing that's really important, kind of like what we're talking about at the airport, if a child does have problems going out in public, what's really important is for them to learn how to breathe. Yes. Because, what do you do whenever, you get scared? You want to run away and then you can't breathe. Right. So it's a way to center themselves. And there's different ways that you can learn how to breathe. Yeah. And the number one thing is yoga, because you're moving around, you're working with that energy, and the children can really feel that energy and just tapping into it. And I mean, they could start when they're 3. Yeah. and it's like you can get little toys and show them, like blowing bubbles is one way that to teach them how to breathe a certain way and to control that breath.
Well, that's cool.
And it's really important for the parents to also do the exercises with the child, because that way it becomes, our thing instead of just the child, and so much more support. And if something else happens, like if the child is experiencing something new, then the child is going to go straight to the parent and feel more comfortable with it.
To share it, not feel like
exactly.
Or they just maybe they just don't think they just kind of hold it back, but maybe they'd be more willing to share it with you.
Right. And the way that the parents can get them to really talk is, if they're really young, you can use like puppets and talk back and forth and have a conversation, because if they, pretend that the puppet is them and it's talking through them, they'll tell you more information. Yeah.
I think that's even used in like therapy, like with toys, because they're kind of more focused, but then they'll start. Yeah. That's a really good idea. Those are some really good tips. I would have never thought about that. I have thought about the breathing, and I really do want to teach my daughter about breathing. I think that's such an important thing. I wish they would. I mean, maybe some schools and stuff do now, but I know in other countries where meditation is a part of the culture, they do. But I just think what a useful skill, for whatever purpose, right? But being able to just gather yourself, coping. And I think breath work is just so important to teach children. And that is a great skill.
And I know as a behavior analyst, that's one thing that we did teach them.
That's awesome.
Even though it wasn't spiritual, it's because they would get that anxiety and that meltdown. And a lot of times you go, okay, let's take 5 deep breaths. Totally. And they see you doing it, and they will imitate with you. Yeah. And so, and then when you're doing different breathing exercises, you can say, okay, let's turn our breath into the color red. And so they can imagine red, which is the root chakra, right? And so then you can gradually educate them more and more what the color red is. Right. But a lot of times, children associate red with anger. And that's another thing that we need to teach our children are the different emotions, because they may not really be understanding. They might say, I'm afraid, when they mean excited, because there's a close thing. Sometimes you get excited, but it's almost like an afraid feeling in a way, anticipation. And so it's really important to teach our children how to explain how they feel, so that if they are an empath like you are and they feel different feelings, well, how does that person feel? Right. Why am I feeling angry when I'm not angry? So they need to know that is 2 different things.
Like you're picking up on somebody's energy I mean, I feel like sometimes too, I've heard other people say this too, but sometimes I'll just feel really like sad or down for no reason, and nothing has happened in my life. And I do believe, you're picking up on, I mean, it could be anything. It could be a past life, could be someone that that's experiencing something, or just like a collective feeling overall. But I'll get that randomly, and you just can't shake it. And so of course children might be feeling like that too, or even if it is their own emotion, right? Like we know developmentally, not even just spiritually, like especially toddlers, like I'm seeing this now, my daughter, I mean, they can't rationalize. There's no such thing as patience, right? They don't know. So they just throw a tantrum. But as they become more conscious, teaching about the emotions and not to be ashamed and anger. And then, if you want to incorporate spiritually, I think that's really cool too.
Yes. And there are so many children books now that talk about the different emotions.
Yeah.
The picture books.
Yeah.
And also, I was going to say something about what you just said, and, my train of thought just went a different direction. I know. But like you said, being an empath and then not knowing how to turn it in and off, you could also teach children how to put up a shield.
Yes.
And I always think of it as I always use a superhero shield because, I worked with so many parents and understand they get angry, that just like any parent because they're being warriors. But for me to be able to get through a conversation, I have to put up a shield so I don't feel that.
Yeah, that's true.
And I can rationally think through it. So I always think of a shield and I'm putting back that energy.
If it's too much or something too. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And I always do it. I do it for myself, but I've been doing it with my daughter too. Just like, a visualization of like a protective white, like bubble around.
Yes.
And that's I think what my medium gal had said, like before she goes into like an airport or somewhere with a lot of people, because she's so sensitive, just protected. Only thing they can get in is love and light. Like, you know what I mean? Just whatever you need to do to kind of protect yourself. So if it's like a shield or a bubble, I think those visualizations are really helpful.
Children are so visual. They're so creative. And that's how and I think too, thinking about, because I just listened to another medium talk about it, about his childhood. And he said, when I was little, I could see spirits. I could see them and I don't anymore. But I think spirit does that because children are so visual.
Yeah. And
then as we go older, we can feel it and we can actually tap into it, see those symbols, be able to connect there and understand it, where a lot of children need that concreteness.
Right. That's interesting. Yeah. Do you, now as an adult though, like does stuff just come through to you, like just messages, or like how do you interpret intuitive? Okay.
Yeah. And that's a great
Just because
question.
I know you said as a child, you felt stuff too, but now that you're an adult, like how does it come through?
So I actually have, we call them clairs, but I actually, whenever I do mediumship and I connect them with spirit or a loved one, sometimes they will give me visuals of what they want me to say. Sometimes I'll just feel exactly what I need to say. And then it's a conversation sometimes back and forth. And it just really depends on how spirit wants to connect with me. Okay. And so I kind of go with it. And sometimes they do all three. And because all of a sudden I'll hear a word, I'll be going, where did that word come from? And it's coming. And so they're wanting me to talk. And whenever you do talk to a loved one on the other side, they are connecting with me to be a communicator. Yeah. So like a car may make sense to me in a certain way, but when I say, okay, they're showing me a car, does this mean that they liked a car? But the sitter may look at it as, oh no, that's how he died, was in a car. Okay. So sometimes it takes both of us, it's all in the interpretation. Right. Now, whenever I do psychic readings, I connect soul to soul. And it's a lot more feeling. Again, I use those three clairs, but it's a lot more feeling and understanding that's going on.
Wow. So you do readings for people one-on-one, but then you can also just pick up on stuff sometimes if you're just having like your own meditation, right? With like spirit.
Yes. Depending upon the intention. Right. Absolutely. So sometimes whenever I meditate, I don't tap in because I just want to clear my mind and practice, connecting with my own energy. Yeah. But I always set the intention first. Like I said, I know how to turn it off and on. Yeah. But like last night, sometimes they just come to me because they're always there. I just have to close it off sometimes and say, right now, I cannot communicate with you. Yeah. Wow. But they're always around. I probably have 5 people in the room with me right now.
And don't you think we all do?
I'm sorry, what?
And don't you think most of us do have,
absolutely.
Yeah, guides and angels around us. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yes, absolutely. And sometimes, you'll have somebody follow you home.
Yeah.
That loves your energy and just loves you and connects with you, and they want to be with you for a little bit. So they'll follow you home.
That's kind of cool. Wow. I know we're going all over the place, but that's what this podcast is. It's like we're just at coffee chatting, right? But I love this story so much. And again, children. So I have 2 stories really quickly, but I just think this is like helpful for people to hear, because if they've had their child say something or they've had these experiences, I just think it helps people not feel funny that they're alone, right?
Yeah.
But
absolutely.
My cousin, I don't know if she knew the girl, or I'm probably butchering the story, but this was in Indiana one night, and a girl was walking alone. She was by herself, walking in the railroad. I think it was like dusk, and there were 2 guys walking towards her, like mean-looking guys, not good. And they had, I think, previously like robbed and maybe raped or done horrible things to females. And they walked by her that night, and she walked by, and like nothing happened. And then they ended up getting caught for doing some other stuff. And I think she had, maybe she was like a witness, or she went in to say like, oh yeah, I did see those guys in that location. And they'd been, again, in trouble for hurting some other females. And they said, well, why didn't you hurt her? She was alone. Like, that's, you know what I mean? Like, you had that opportunity. And they said, well, she was walking with another really big guy, but she was alone.
Oh,
but she wasn't alone, right? So things like that, like, give me goosebumps. She had a guide with her.
Yes.
But I think that's so fascinating that they could see him, but she couldn't.
Right.
Yeah.
That is awesome. I mean, that is a protector. Oh my gosh.
And then I have like one more that I think is just so cool. This was actually happening to my cousin. And again, this is what's perfect for this episode because they were children at the time. My older cousin was in the front seat playing in the car, and I don't know if it was running or not. I don't think it was running, but I think somehow she like pressed these are older cars, like in the 70s. She pressed the shift thing, and my aunt was trying to get my younger cousin into the back seat, and I don't know, somehow he wasn't in yet or loose, and so she reversed the car. It started rolling back and rolled over him. I mean, tire marks and all, not good. And so they had to rush, to the hospital. And in that moment, I can't remember if my aunt I think she did. A man appeared and drove them to the hospital to help them get there. And my cousin said she remembers exactly what he looked like. I think there might have even been 2 men. One with like blue eyes and one was Asian, like very detailed. And I do actually think my aunt saw them and they were helping, but then they kind of disappeared once they got to the hospital. But my little, cousin at the time remembered that. And I just think that's the kind of stuff you can't make up. And, it's like fascinating to me that there really, our guides are here to help us. And there's probably so many occurrences like that we just never really know.
No, and that's absolutely earth angels is what I love to call them, and that they come and they go, but they're angels that are actually helping, and they can come in any form, to help. But yes, and I think they come when there's a reason, you know what I'm saying? And I think that, thank you for sharing.
Yeah,
that is
I
so
love those
fascinating.
stories. I just think like, that's the kind of stuff where anyone just saying that, they're not even like spiritual woo people, and they have these stories. It's just like you can't deny that.
And I think that kind of makes people believers. Especially when it happens to you, it's not a coincidence,
right?
And and people start, that isn't a coincidence, is it?
Yeah. And I think a lot of people, even if they don't like truly believe there's like 5 around you or that you could pray to them, I think a lot of people just like to even just kind of think in our society, like, we all have guardian angels. It's kind of a common thought, right? But I mean, I've had tons of readings with guides coming through, and some have been ancestors with details that like no one would know. And, the psychic told me, and it's just like, it's really cool if you have the opportunity, if people that are listening haven't, to have a reading and see if any of your ancestors can come through. It's really cool.
And whenever this, I worked at a holistic fair just recently, and I think every client that came in were brand new to it, and they look so scared when they sit down. I go, "Are you scared?" And they go, "Yeah, I am a little bit." I was going, "Don't be afraid," because it's the anticipation of not knowing what's going to happen.
Yeah, and what's going to come through, if anything. Yeah.
And it's all in the healing. And I always tell them there's always a reason. Whoever comes through, because sometimes they'll want a specific person that has passed on that they want to come through. And I said, sometimes it's somebody that really has a big message for you that you will know. And then we'll talk to whoever you want to next. But there's always a reason why a certain spirit comes in.
Yeah, that's really cool. I was going to mention this before, but it kind of goes in with this. So I have readings with a guy named Travis who's been on my show many times, and his specialty is really connecting with past loved ones and your higher self. And so my husband had a really good idea. He said, well, maybe he could do one for our daughter. I wonder if he ever does like young, babies or toddlers. Right. And we did one, and she sat there with us, and, he asked her higher self permission if he could do it and everything. And we were sitting right there. And he said something immediately. He goes, she's really in tune. She's 16 months. She's really in tune with sounds. She can pick up frequencies more, she's more sensitive than most of us. And not only like animals and people, but she can pick up on machine sounds. Like that's really sensitive for her. And that was so helpful for us to know, because she will hear like an airplane outside of our house, and she will just like point and like she'll stop everything, right? And I've asked other friends with kids her age, and they're like, no, like they don't really ever hear that. Right. And even now in the few weeks we've heard, and we'll see if it's just true. He was saying she might be like a sound healer. That could be one of her things she came to do. We'll see if that comes true. But when the microwave will be going, or things machine related, she kind of goes like this. So now we kind of know that sensitivity, sensor. So, it's stuff like that can be actually truly really helpful just for daily. Because, we didn't really understand why she was doing that all the time, putting her hands over her ears. But now it makes so much sense.
And, she can probably also talk to angels because they have that higher frequency.
Yeah, I think that'd be cool.
Yes. Yeah. So that's another thing that she'll be able to tap into. Yeah. And they may, it's almost like for us, it's almost like a ringing in your ear. But with her, she can probably hear them. Okay. And it is such a higher frequency for angels.
Yeah. That's cool. I actually will get that sometimes in one ear, and I've heard that that's some, divine or spirit, something coming through, but I haven't been able to determine what it is. And I've always heard you're just supposed to kind of stop and either think about what you were thinking, or can you also just like ask, like if there's something I need to know, like, can you tell me, or like, what do you recommend doing?
I would do both. That's exactly, you said it to the T.
Okay.
I would do both. Yeah. Okay. So stop whatever you were thinking about or what you saw or, contemplating on, stop and think about it. And then if you're not for sure, ask them, can you please speak more clear for me? Okay. And they could also be tuning you in for that message. Okay. So they're trying to also raise your vibration a little bit. Right. So it's a lot that could be going on.
Because I always hear, people were getting like spiritual downloads and different things.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Because that's been happening, but I just can't seem to get what it is. And I would love to. So.
But sometimes we can think too much.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you'll hear something, you're going, oh, no, that's not what it is. So don't overthink it. Yeah. So whatever first comes through, that is the answer.
Okay. Yeah. Because it's one ear, and it's not like, is it tinnitus or something? It's very clear, and it's for like 10 seconds, and then it goes away, right? Or whatever. Right. So you'll know if you get that. That's something coming through.
Now I have had where and my dog even heard it. I had heard such a loud frequency, and it went on for, I want to say about 10 minutes, but I knew it wasn't just me because again, my dog was like, what is going on? And he was in the room with me. So that can also happen. And I think it was just spirit working with me to try to get me at a higher frequency.
Okay. So maybe it's not a message. It's just, they're kind of helping you to
raise that vibration.
Okay, that's interesting. Okay. And I think animals can definitely hear stuff too.
Oh gosh. Oh, absolutely. They can see. Yeah, if your dog, yes.
That's why they're always like looking at the wall and then they like run off. I've heard that cats are here for more of the psychic protection and intuition, whereas, dogs are here more for like the loyalty and teaching us about love. I think they could still hear things, but That's really interesting too.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And I will tell you this story because as a teenager, again, metaphysics was just fascinating to me. And I couldn't really talk to anybody. So I started exploring. And so I got the Ouija board out. And I know, as a teenager, and I had the dog in the room with me. And I started, using it. And all of a sudden my dog started barking. Like there was something in the room. I said, okay, Ouija board away. I'm done.
Yeah.
So, and I know there's different opinions on the Ouija board, but because I really was diving into something I didn't have the knowledge or I didn't have a mentor to help me through, I shouldn't have done it.
Okay. I know that's a segue, but actually I've always wondered that. What are your thoughts on those? Is it your intent or can they be dangerous?
I think it's your intention. I think it can be dangerous. I mean, if a teenager is, gothic or depressed, you may bring in
some
a spirit that's
energy.
Right.
Okay.
So I would always have a mentor, somebody who knows what they're doing to help you with it.
Okay.
Now I did have a mentor teacher who said, there's nothing wrong with Ouija boards.
Okay.
But there again, I've heard the opposite.
Sure.
So, but everybody uses different tools.
Yeah.
So if you have a psychic medium that uses a Ouija board or something that's similar, then that's the tool that she uses.
Sure. Yeah. Some use crystals or like sound, things.
Yeah. And that's another thing. If you do have a child and you're not for sure what to do, it is so important to find someone who is knowledgeable in the metaphysics. Yeah. To find a psychic medium or a light worker or somebody, that really understands what your child is going through. Yeah. Because again, that way you can make sure that that they're going on the correct pathway that they need to go on.
Totally. And this is actually a good question to ask you for people that are either wanting to explore for their children or themselves. How do you recommend that people find people? Like obviously, we're going to give your information. If people are interested, they could contact you maybe for a reading. And I've done tons of readings with all different types of mediums. And, my advice at least is just like, feel it out, right? Because there are even intuitive people that can help you, but they can also not have the best energy. You have to protect your energy. And really trust your intuition with, if it doesn't feel like a fit with somebody, like listen to that, right? So I'm not saying go to any psychic, intuitive person, but I think you'll know, one, it comes back to your intuition, two, you'll kind of see some of the stuff that I think they talk about, how it makes you feel. And, I think if things are coming through that just like don't resonate at all ever, that might be something to kind of pay attention to, right? But if there's some stuff coming through that no one would have ever known, and you're like, wow, that's actually really cool, right? So what are some tips though that you could give for people if they're looking to want to meet a medium? Because I think it can be really, for people that aren't familiar with this world, it can be kind of daunting and scary, right?
Oh, absolutely. And you're right, because you don't really, they always say, go to someone who you're attracted to. And Spirit always, finds you that mentor, the teacher. And I've been very, very lucky along the way to being able to find people that had great intentions and really cared about healing. And so I think it's again, going online, talking with people. You can go to, a metaphysical store in your area, and they can also help you. And it's just like word of mouth, I think is so important.
Way. That's how I found people.
Yes. Yes. Because when you go on the computer, sometimes, they'll look better than, what they really are. Right. Their intention may be to make the money. And I know that it's important for the exchange, but it's also important for someone to have a heart into it and see the spiritual aspect of it.
Totally.
I know there are some people, especially when you go to a fair, a holistic fair, I'll be sitting at a table and the person next to me is reading completely different than I am. Yeah. Some people will use crystals, tarot cards, they're doing energy work. It's just so fascinating. We all use different things, and you need to go to a psychic medium that you feel comfortable with.
I agree.
So, and I had somebody sit in front of me, and she was actually young. I want to say she was probably 20, and she saw my cards, because sometimes I'll use oracle cards, and she goes, I don't want to use cards. And I said, we don't have to use cards. Yeah. because there are a lot of people that love cards for some reason. I think it's because it's visual.
Right.
And I told her, I said, I don't have to use the cards. It's okay. I'll tap in and I can get the energy and the information that way.
Yeah.
So you got to go with what you're comfortable with.
That's true. And I think just, you'll feel the energy with someone just like anybody else. Like if you were going to find a therapist or you were meeting someone like a friend or dating, whatever, like if you don't feel right, then don't keep seeing them, right? It's pretty
absolutely
simple.
because it can harm you. Because when somebody, reads you and they go, oh, you're going to meet somebody, in 6 months, or they tell you about a medical thing that's going on in your body and it's not true. I mean, that can really do some damage. I mean, that psychic mediums pretty much got their life, your life in their hands.
Right.
So, you've got to look at how they work and if they're very genuine and take the information and know that you have free will.
Totally.
You don't have to follow what they tell you.
Right. That's true. And I think one thing that I've noticed, just because again, I've explored so many because I love that kind of stuff and I'm drawn to it. But I also have gone to many and then they say the same similar things. And that helps me, just as like a human, right? Just kind of reassures me. I mean, they're not always going to say the same things, but
no, I know what you mean. Yes.
You know what I mean? Like that's my way of collecting data, if you will. Like, trust me, I'm very woo-woo and not scientific data, but like as a human, you still need some reassurance. And when I've had 2 or 3 people that don't know each other say very similar things in certain aspects of my life, that makes me feel like, okay, I feel like I can trust them more.
Yes. Absolutely.
So that's
because a lot of people always tell people, my clients, don't come but once every 6 months. Because if you go like once a month, you may get the same information, which you're right. It's a good thing because you know that people are tapping into the same energy and getting the same information. So it's consistent.
Totally. Yeah. And you can always also, if it gets too overwhelming, you can have them stop. I've had people that are telling me like, you're safe here. Like things like that should be discussed. Like you should feel safe. Like if you're feeling, I was in a meditation, it was really emotional. It started feeling uncomfortable for me. And she's like, we can tap it down. Like, I think those are important things for people to remember too. Like you you can have control. You can ask them to help you kind of like pause, or you can stop. So like there's, like you said, boundaries. I think that's really important for people to understand.
Yeah. And the one thing that I always ask them, not only do I get permission to do the reading first, I always say, do you want to hear everything Spirit has to say to you? Because sometimes you get triggered. Yeah. So if you experience something very violent when you were younger and that comes across, that could trigger you. Right. So I always tell them, stop me at any time.
If it's too much.
So again, yes, they are in control of because it's their reading.
Yeah.
And if if you're the psychic medium that you're going to keeps giving you wrong information, especially in the beginning, then there's not really a good connection.
Yes. Yeah.
So any good psychic medium will say, I'm going to give you back your money. I'm not going to charge you. So that's when you know that their heart is in it.
Right.
So if you feel like your reading's not going, don't wait till the end, because then, you spent 30 minutes to an hour with a psychic medium. Say, you know what? I don't think I'm connecting with you. Let's stop. Yeah. Can I get my money back or a few, a percentage of it back? I need to find somebody else. Yeah. And if they're in their right heart, they will understand and say yes.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's good advice. Yeah, definitely. And I also think one last thing is just like, I went to a gal that knew a lot about stuff going on like worldly, and she would never tell me. I always had to ask her, if that makes sense. So she wasn't just like telling me things and like drilling it in my brain. She waited till I was ready. I mean, I saw her for months, but I mean, like, I was the one that would like ask her things. She would never just like throw it into my face, if that makes sense, because it was what I was comfortable with. Right. So I think this is really great. We talked about that. I've never talked about that on this show. And I talked to a ton of mediums, and, I think there are a lot of people that have done this stuff, a lot of people that haven't. And so I think that's really important to talk about. So thank you for sharing that. Just as someone who does readings, I think it's important for people to understand, like, this isn't just some like reckless thing that we're just like throwing around, whether you're the one getting it done or doing it. There are boundaries, there are comfort levels, there's respect, there's love and energy. And I just think that's really important to touch on. So I'm glad we actually talked about that.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. And it is very important to have that respect for one another, because it's not a dog and pony show. It is more of healing. That's the only reason why I want to do it, is because it's a healing process. Because a lot of people are looking for answers, or like you said, guidance or reassurance. And, and if you don't feel like you're healing, then why are you in the business?
Yeah. That's a good, the intent should be to heal and help.
And especially with mediumship is really big, because with mediumship, people are grieving. And so just knowing that their loved one is okay. I mean, I get a lot of questions. Is my loved one okay? Yeah. Are they still mad at me? And I didn't get to say goodbye.
Yeah.
And so, for Spirit, the divine, to use me in that way, because it's not about me, is to connect in and help heal this person.
Right. You're like a bridge to the, which thank you for all the bridges out there. We're grateful for you.
Absolutely.
It is very special to connect to the other side. It is. Yeah. Wow. Well, thank you. Well, I think this has been such a cool conversation. We went all over the place, and
we did, but you know what?
I love it.
That's why people call me ADHD sometimes.
Hey, I'm all
That's
about
a conversation.
Yeah, I love going down different rabbit holes. I love it. Well, where can people find your book, and where can they find you online?
Okay, well, I do have a website, and it is www.michellehendersonmedium.com. And also have a Facebook page and Instagram page under the same name. And they can find the book in any bookstore, Amazon. Everybody goes to Amazon. Yeah. So you can find it on Amazon as well.
Okay, cool. And we'll link it. I'll link Amazon link or whatever, and your link. I'll put it in the show description notes so people can find you easily. Yeah.
And if they're not for sure about the book, if the book is for them, they can get a free chapter. Okay. If they go to my website, there is a page where you can download it.
Okay. That's really cool. Wow. I love it. Well, thank you so much for all the work that you're doing to help.
Oh, thank you.
Everybody here on earth as we're moving through our journey. And
absolutely. Absolutely. And I have gratitude on a daily basis. And thank you so much for, the divine, giving me the courage to go ahead and come out of the closet as a psychic medium.
Yeah, it's a brave thing to do. Yes. Wow. Well, thanks so much, Michelle.
Thank you, my dear. Thank you for the great conversation.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I hope everybody enjoyed today. I know I did. And you can find me as usual on my Instagram page at RealLaurenLive and my website, lauren.live. Thanks.